All right, so now we're going to get started on Between the World and Me. We're going to go to the last assignment in today's module, Between the World and Me. That's going to have the text and our guiding question sheet. You know the drill. Click the link. Now, this guiding question sheet already has questions on it. We are going to use that as a way of annotating the text since the text is online and we can't type directly into it. Make my copy. 9/25/17. You will be turning this in as your annotations for today, along with your top hat comparison. Put it in my I1 ELA folder, select OK, and close out my original. Now, I'm going to open up the text right here. This is a PDF of the book. Unfortunately, I don't have paper copies for everyone. I would love it if I did. Between the World and Me. So we'll start off just by looking at these little dedications. They sort of give us a sense for what the book is like. And one morning, while in the woods, I stumbled suddenly upon the thing. Stumbled upon it in a grassy clearing guarded by scaly oaks and elms, and the sooty details of the scene rose, thrusting themselves between the world and me. So this is by Richard Wright, who's a very famous African-American author that you might read later on in high school. This quote immediately is starting to make me think of this is some kind of shock. This is where the title came from, is something overwhelming. I'm not totally sure what it is though, so I'm going to keep going. The second dedication here for part 1. Do not speak to me of martyrdom, of men who die to be remembered on some parish day. I don't believe in dying, though I too shall die. And violets, like castanets, will echo me. So this right here is making me think of, obviously this has something to do with death, and this is something this person wants us to think of not dying for something, but taking your own natural path. So now that I sort of have those two ideas to start off reading, I'm going to go. It starts off. Son. Last Sunday, the host of a popular news show asked me what it meant to lose my body. The host was broadcasting from Washington, D.C., and I was seated in a remote studio on the far west side of Manhattan. A satellite closed the miles between us, but no machinery could close the gap between her world and the world for which I had been summoned to speak. Right here, so we're starting off, we know it's a letter to his son. And we know he's starting off talking about how he was interviewed for a TV show, maybe something like the interview that we just watched. It's kind of a jarring way to begin the story to me. And one thing I notice immediately is he's talking about the satellite closed the miles between us, but no machinery could close the gap between her world and the world for which I had been summoned to speak. So that makes me think immediately that he's talking about some very wide distance, and this interview is a representation of that distance that he feels in some way. So if I go to my guiding question sheet, I have my first question, why is this written as a letter to his son? And I'm going to come back to this till I have more information because that seems like a really big question. But starting off, why does he begin with recounting an interview he had? I kind of feel like the interview represents the distance between worlds that he feels. I'm going to leave it there though and come back to it. Let's keep going. When the host asked me about my body, her face faded from the screen and was replaced by a scroll of words written by me earlier that week. The host read those words for the audience, and when she finished, she turned to the subject of my body, although she did not mention it specifically. But by now, I am accustomed to intelligent people asking about the condition of my body without realizing the nature of their request. So, right here, this is starting to make me think a little bit of what we looked at in the Do Now, the protests for Black Lives Matter. We know that this has something to do with Coates' ideas about race relations, and I'm thinking about those pictures of people using their body in protest and their bodies on the ground. So those are some of the connections I'm starting to make here. Specifically, the host wished to know why I felt that white America's progress, or rather, the progress of those Americans who believe that they are white, was built on looting and violence. Hearing this, I felt an old and indistinct sadness well up in me. The answer to this question is the record of the believers themselves. The answer is American history. This one really sticks out to me, where he says, white America's progress, or rather, the progress of those Americans who believe that they are white. That is a phrase I've never heard before. Those who believe that they are white. That's starting to get a lot of ideas moving, but what it's starting to make me think of here is something to do with, you must not think that race is a real thing. And what is the significance if race is not a real thing? It's just something that people believe in. So that's something that I'm starting to look at here. If we go back and look at the questions, why does Coates continually refer to white people as people who believe they are white? And this is not the complete answer. This is the beginning of the answer. He believes but I want to come back to that, because if race is not a real thing, it's something people believe in, then we have to consider what is the significance of that. If it's not real, it's something that people believe in. So, you are going to spend the next 18 minutes reading to page 12. That goes up to the picture of him and his son right here. As you read, be looking for answers to your guiding questions in here. You will put the answers. You can't copy and paste the quotes, but you can type in sections of them.